Hello everybody, and welcome to a brand new build video with me, Sherman, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Northernwind advanced version. Now, it took me a while to get used to this playstyle, I'm not going to lie, but once I did, this build is amazing. It is so amazing now. And it's a lot better than it was in the past because now it utilizes a lot of CC. Like, this is like the best crowd control tank you can play. Literally, hands down. No tank is better at crowd control than the Northernwind. I am not kidding you. So let's get right into it. Let's take a look at the stats. As you can see, 30k health with a 29k magicka, 16k stamina. Now this is an off-tank build, guys. This is not a main tank. This is an off-tank. Now, I'm not going to lie. Argonians are good. Dark Elf is better at this. And that's because they get 9% max magic and 6% stamina. That 6% stamina will actually put them at about a 18k stamina with a much higher magicka pool. And the problem is then is that you got to make up the difference in health, and it's just a trade-off. So you can wind up having the same with a Dark Elf. High Elves can play this build really good, but they're not as effective. So let's go ahead and take a look at the gear. And this is an off tank, not a main tank. So looking at the gear here, we are running the Ice Heart still. And as you can see, we are using a medium helm infused with a with Ice Heart. And one piece Ice Heart gives you some spell crit, and then the two piece gives you spell whenever you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to give yourself a 10k damage shield for 6 seconds. While this damage shield holds, you deal 1,008 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters of you every 1 second for 6 seconds. This is why this is a really good CC, is because you still have a chance of applying chill on the enemies. And that chill applies minor main. And if you can get them to be in the area of your effects, of your abilities, you can also lock them down and make them immobilized. So it's a really good CC, especially in dungeons, dungeon play. Trials, it works really good for CC as well, but mainly you're running this because you want that damage shield and you want that proccing of damage that it does. So moving on, next up we have the Ice Heart shoulder, which is in light and sturdy. And I could go with something else, but honestly this is the best setup for it. I've tried other things. Now we're going to move on to the main 5-piece set. Now this build runs a 5-piece, a 3-piece, and a 2-piece. And there's a reason for it, and I'll get to that in a second. And you can equip some other things in here to make this build a lot better. But this is just to help you get there. Remember, this is to help you get to endgame. This isn't a true endgame build. So, when it comes to the main 5-piece set, we are running Shulk's Exoskeleton. Now, the reason we're running Shulk's is, if you look what Shulk's does, it adds health, spell damage, and spell crit. That extra spell crit stacks with this spell crit. That's why we have almost 40% spell crit, is because we're using two things with spell crit here. This also adds a little bit of spell damage. That's why our spell damage is so high. And on top of that, it gives us minor heroism whenever we're in combat. So we don't need to use Heroic Slash with this. We're always going to be generating ultimate whenever we're in combat. So there's no reason to use Heroic Slash. Alright, so moving on to the last and final of the sets, that is Willpower. Now, the reason I'm using Willpower, I wish I had Willpower with health in it, because it would be better. Because it would give me a greater health pool, and I could put more into magicka that way, but unfortunately I don't have that on the PTS. But this is also gold Willpower, and you can't get this in-game. So just remember, the stats are going to be a little different from the real game and this, just by a little bit. But as you can see, we get 1,451 extra magicka from the 2-piece, and the 5-piece gives us extra spell damage. So this is going to be essential to this build. Because you're using a lot of AoE, you need that extra spell damage to make sure that AoE does damage. Moving on to the sword and shield, we are running a Northernwind shield, just a crafted shield with a infused sword. And it has a hardening enchant. On the back bar, we're running a infused ice staff with a crusher enchant. Now watch what happens when I switch bars. See, my resistances don't change by a lot, and that's because a staff gets the same mitigation, almost, bonus, as a shield does. Now, this shield is Nernhoned, so it's going to have a little bit greater, it's going to have 2021 extra armor added to my character, but when I switch, because I get 1500 extra resistances for using an ice staff, it compensates. So it's not bad. Also, you'll notice our weapon damage here is a little low. Don't stress it, guys. It's fine. And yeah, so let's get over to the skills now. Now, I will say this before I move to the skills. You can swap these out. You can take a Maelstrom staff here, which is awesome on the back bar. And you can use either a Master Sword and Shield, an Asylum Sword and Shield, or a Master Sword and Shield here, which adds also some awesome stuff to your character. Any one of them can work here, and it helps out a lot. So going into the skills now, on the passives, I'm going to do the passives like I've done in all my other videos. You want to make sure that you have all the passives unlocked on your bar, or on your class. And that's because you just want the benefits. Next up, make sure you have Sword and Shield passives all maxed out, and Destruction passives all maxed out. And yes, you want to fill in all of these, because you're going to be blocking on both Sword and Shield and the Ice Staff. And the Ice Staff with Trifocus gives you a taunt and a damage shield, and it's a small damage shield, but it's still a nice damage shield that goes well with the hardening enchant, with the monster set, and with the other damage shield you run. So this is going to help with that. Moving on down here, you're also going to want to get Ancient Knowledge maxed out. This is going to make your Frost Staff reduce the cost of blocking by 36%. This is just like using Sword and Shield, and it makes it to where it can block 20% of the damage. So this is going to be really good, because it's like using Sword and Shield on both bars, but the Ice Staff's going to give you the same benefit. Now, the other thing that's great about the Tri-Staff, the Ice Staff, is you get a taunt if you heavy attack. And this is how you're going to maintain your magic resources, by the way, is you're going to be doing heavy attacks on your Ice Staff to get keep your resources coming in. And if you need to get resources coming in, you can always swap bars and maintain blocking. So, just letting you guys know. On down to the armor, we are running 5 heavy, 1 light, 1 medium. So you want to make sure that you fill in these right here, these passives, on all these exact passives, and all your heavy ones. Moving on to the world skills, Soul Magic, I always fill in Soul Summon and Soul Lock, just so I have that extra stuff there. And then now moving on again to the guilds, Fighters Guild, I only have 2 things in here unlocked, and that's Intimidating Presence and Banish the Wicked. In the Mages Guild, I have Persuasive Will. Now, I should actually do this, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And you want to make sure you have this, because you are running Inner Light on 1 bar. And Inner Light gives you 5% max magicka. But with this, you'll get another 2%. So you get 7% max magicka on this bar. And on the back bar, we are running this Northern Storm, because it gives us 8% max magicka. So that's why we're running this build this particular way, is to get those 2 benefits. Moving on to the Undaunted, we have Undaunted Command. Now this you want to make sure you get, and you want to make sure you get this one, especially this one, because you want that max health, stamina, and magicka. You want this for whenever you synergize something, you get that extra health, magic, and stamina return to help you with resource management. Now remember, synergies can only be activated every 30 seconds this update, which kind of sucks, so you have to maintain your own resources. Next up, you do want to make sure you unlock Inner Rage, which is a Magicka Morph Taunt. This is something that you can swap out if you need to with some with another ability in here. And usually I would suggest swapping it out with Blockade of Frost. Now you're probably going, why Blockade of Frost? Because this is going to get a 220% chance of applying Chilled and Immobilize, versus this, which isn't going to get much. So yeah, moving on to Alliance War. We do want to make sure we get Aggressive Warhorn, and if you want, on the back bar, you can get Efficient Purge and Replenishing Barrier to have there. just for those moments where you might need it. Like your group's having trouble struggling through a dungeon, they're dying a lot, replenishing barrier, you can drop it on the back bar. You can adjust some things, put inner light back here. Efficient purge, if you need it for a group in a trial or something, you have it unlocked. And you can swap it out with anything, really. Mainly, the other thing you want to do is make sure you have this. So if you do equip one of these, you get a 10% magic recovery. Alright, moving on to the racials. Now, Argonian, the reason I chose Argonian is because, one, they have resourceful. They get 3% max magicka, but whenever they drink a potion, as you can see, they get a lot of resources back. And being an Argonian, you also get, the potion thing, but you also get 9% max health and poison and disease resistance, along with increased healing done and healing received. Moving on to Alchemy. You want to make sure you get the medicinal use to reduce... Sorry, to make the potion last longer. That's it. And then provisioning, you want to make sure you get Gourmand and Connoisseur for the same things. It adds more time to your food use. So, oops, go back in here. Alright, so that's that. Let's go ahead and swap bars back. And now we're going to go over the skills. On the main bar, we are going to be using Frozen Device. This is a pull, by the way, if you guys didn't know. So I'm going to go show you guys how it works real quick. We're going to have to fight this enemy. So, Frozen Device, what it does is it pulls the enemy to you, which gives you time to taunt it. It also stuns him. Oops, wrong ability. Go ahead and get my buffs up and everything, which I should have had up to begin with. Alright, so that's why we have Frozen Device there, is it's an enemy thing, it pulls enemies, and it does work on elite mobs. Giants are considered elite mobs, so are mammoths. And it does work in trial enemies too, so you can pull them to you and you can tank them up. Alright, going back into the skills. Next up we have Pierce Armor. This is your main bread and butter taunt. This is going to allow you to taunt the enemy for 15 seconds. It's also going to apply Major Breach and Major Fracture. Now, because you don't have as much stamina or weapon damage, the damage from this is going to be kind of low. That's why we're not going to be focusing on this bar, except for tanking. The next ability we have is Bone Shield. Now, Bone Shield, as you can see, it gives you an increased... it gives you a damage shield that's based on 36% of your max health, but it also redirects any melee damage done to you back to the enemy by 43%. 43% of the damage absorbed is redirected back to the enemy, and it's also a synergy. Moving on, we have Absorb Magic. This is just here basically for the 8% damage, increased damage you can block, and the reduced block cost of 8%. So that's the main reason why it's here. It does give you a little bit of a nice damage shield, but honestly, you will barely use it. And then Inner Light. Inner Light is there to give you 5% max magic. It also gives you increased magic crit. Now, when you swap bars, you're only going to be on the back bar long enough to drop this, do this, and make sure your buffs are up. That's it. So get your buffs up and then use the wall and this, and then you're going to swap bars. You're mainly going to be on the sword and shield bar. So this is why I said Dark Elf would be better for this build. Alright, so back over here. Next up is Aggressive Warhorn. This gives you max magicka, max stamina, and max toughness. And I just want to show you guys this real quick so you guys can see. When you use Warhorn, you go up to 32,000 magicka, 32,000 health, and 18k stamina. While in a trial, that's what it's going to look like all the time. So you're going to have really good resource pools to tank with, and you're going to have a good amount of health to tank with, at least as an off-tank. You're going to have a good amount of magicka to increase your damage output and stuff, and have a good resource pool. And you're going to have a good resource pool for blocking on the stamina side. But remember, you're going to have a damage shield that's going to be going off like crazy because of the ice wall and this. And this is why you want to keep those up as much as possible. is they get increased damage. As you can see, this one goes up to 779, this one goes up to 16 something, but when you're buffed up with all your buffs and everything, they go up in damage as well. Alright, now back to the, or onto the back bar. Next up we have Blockade of Frost. Now I'm using Blockade of Frost because it lasts for 8 seconds, and it reduces the movement speed of the enemies who go in it by 60%. Like I said, you want a CC tank, Warden is the best. Now, because of using a Frost Staff, I also get a passive here called Elemental Force. Now, Elemental Force means I can apply Shield, Concussion, or Burning at 100% effectiveness. This is normally a 10%, but with 100% more, it makes it a 20% chance that I can apply Shield to them. This, because I'm a Warden, and Winter's Embrace, I get Icy, or I get a Frozen Armor, is it? No, this one. This one increases the chance of applying Shield to enemies by 200%. So with this one, I actually get a 30% chance to apply it from this. So it makes it a lot more effective. Or it's something like that. I forget, you know, but you get the point. You get a greater chance of applying this with that. So that's why I run these two abilities, is for CC, for crowd control, and for damage. So really effective. Next up we have Lotus Blossom. This is a great ability. It grants us major prophecy. So we don't really need Inner Light. We just have it there for that 7% max magicka, because we're going to have this all the time on our character, which is going to give us major prophecy, which increases our crit chance. But it also gives us a really good way to maintain our health, but it also heals nearby allies. Any damage we do with a light or heavy attack heals our allies, and it heals us. So it's really good. Next up, we have Blue Betty. This gives us major sorcery, which increases our spell damage, but it also gives us magic recovery over 27 seconds, and it removes 1 negative effect whenever cast. Now, this is an instant cast, no magicka, no stamina cost. It's free to cast, so you can cast this to remove negative effects. And it's really good. Next up, we have Ice Fortress. This gives us minor protection. It also grants us Major Ward and Major Resolve, increasing physical and spell resistance by 5,280 for not only us, but those standing within 8 meters of us will get that resistance buff. We're the ones who gain the minor protection, which reduces our damage received. Really effective. Now, I run this for a reason. I choose Northern Storm all over anything else. And the main reason why is it's a great damage AoE. It's a great CC, 70% reduced movement speed. And if you have your Wall of Ice down, that 70% stacks with that 60% and gives you a massive amount of movement speed reduction. But it also grants major protection to anyone standing in the 10-meter circle. So it reduces the incoming damage you receive by 30%. So this is a great way to help mitigate a lot more damage. And that 30% damage is like having a sword and shield up and blocking. So you don't even need to block when you have this going. You can literally stand there and just heavy attack while this is going on. Now this lasts for 8 seconds, so you can get 4 heavy attacks off while this is up. Only use this in a dungeon situation. In trials, don't try not to use it because you really need that war horn up. So, yeah. Now, I mentioned in my other video, I was talking about Bone Shield. I want to show you guys this because I mentioned this in the other video. Remember my guy, I said the Bone Shield is based off of your max health? Sorry, I was wrong. It's not based off of your max health, the Bone Shield's damage redirection. I can't seem to figure out where it comes from because that's 43% on this character, and it was 42% on my other character. And on another character I have, it's 49%. So it's really hard to tell where that extra damage comes from damage shield. But it does redirect so much of the damage back to the enemies, which is really, really effective. So that is the skills, guys. Now we're going to go over the champion points. And the champion points, very similar again to what we have on the other ones, except these are going to be different in the blue tree. These ones are pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and start here. 37 in Ironclad. This reduces or helps us reduce the direct damage we take by 15%. Next up, we have 37 into Thick Skin. This also gives us a 15% damage reduction from damage over time. Now, you know that Ice Fortress gives us an 8% minor protection. That minor protection stacks with Hardy and Elemental Defender. That helps us reduce a lot more damage. So that's going to help us mitigate more damage. Moving on, we have 56 in the Bastion. This increases any damage shield in the game. Doesn't matter if it's an item set, whatever. It will increase its effect by 20%. So that's how we get the 5k damage shield on the Hardening enchant. This is how we get the 10k damage shield from Ice Heart. And we get the 36% from Bone Shield. This allows us to have really good damage shield mitigation, because damage shields don't have resistances. They just absorb the amount of damage it says. So this allows us to get really good damage mitigation on our character to where we don't have to block as much, because those damage shields are going to mitigate most of the damage. 16 in Expert Defender. This gives us a 10% reduced damage taken from light and heavy attacks. This does stack with the 8% we get from minor protection, the 10% we get from Hardy and Elemental Expert, and the 15% we get with Thick Skin or the direct damage. Well, not Thick Skin, because Thick Skin is not considered light. Like the damage over time isn't considered light or heavy attacks, but any light or heavy attack, you get my point. So moving on, we have 23 in the Warlord, which reduces the cost to break free, saves resources. Bashing Focus saves resources, guys. That's it. Moving over here, 43 in Arcanist. This gives us increased magic recovery by 10%. Being a Warden, you get 15% as long as you have a Nature's whatever ability equipped. And we have 1-on-1 bar. So when we're on that bar, we actually get greater magic recovery when we're on the staff bar. So yeah, just make sure you have that. And then 75 in the Tenacity. This increases the amount of return we get from Magicka and Stamina from our heavy attacks. That's why I put 75 in here, is because we are going to be heavy attacking from the Ice Staff and from Sword and Board, and this just allows us greater capabilities of doing that. Moving on over here, we have 56 in the Shadow Ward. This also reduces the cost of our blocking by 20%. Next up, we have 10 in Befoul. And the 10 in Befoul also reduces the healing effectiveness. So Reverberating Bash, anything that does Major Defile, this gives you 15% more. Now, you can't put Reverberating Bash on the bar if you need it for certain situations, but that's only if you need it. Next up, we have 17 into Tumbling. This reduces our dodge roll by 7%. We also get 4% for wearing one piece of medium armor. That's a 10 or 11% reduction in dodge roll. Really helps out in saving resources. Now, moving on to the blue tree, and this is where I said it was going to be different. We have 43 into Blessed. This increases our healing done by 10%. We have 23 into Elfborn. This increases our healing and critical healing and our critical damage done by 10%. And then we have 43 into Elemental Expert, which increases our Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage. Since we're dealing mostly in Frost, we get 5 or 10% from here. And being a Warden, just so you guys can see, you get Piercing Cold. You get 6% increase in magic damage. So this right here, along with being with being a Warden and the champion points, that's a 16% increase in any frost damage you do. Moving to the middle tree, we have 35 into Staff Expert. This increases our staff damage by 20%. Next up, we have 37 into Master at Arms. This increases our direct damage with our heavy attacks and our light attacks from both Sword and Shield and from the Ice Staff by 15%. Next up, we have 23 into Shattering Blows. This increases our damage done against damage shield enemies by 10%. So any damage we deal to them, we can push 10% more through the damage shields. And then onto this tree, we have 23 into Thaumaturge, just to give us 10% more damage from our damage over time. And 2 of our abilities are damage over time, so this just increases them by a little bit to help out. And that's it for the champion points. But I did forget something, and I do want to go over it real quick. So here in the gear, I forgot to go over where the jewelry enchants were. And on the jewelry enchants, we have 1 magic recovery, we have 1 arcane, or sorry, 1 spell damage, and then 1 shield play. So we get that little bit of extra blocking capabilities. Now we are running 4 sturdy, 3 infused, and a Nirnhone shield. So that's pretty much just to give us that extra blocking capability, extra tanking capabilities, that kind of stuff. Now, like I said, in the live game, because of the changes or the way this works, it's better to go healthy on all 3 of these. Just put healthy on them. Don't worry about it. You'll still be at a decent Magicka pool, and if you set up the tri-stats here, here, and here, and you set these up to be max health, depending on the race, really helps out. In some races, you're going to get better Magicka and stamina pools. So it just depends on what you're playing and how you play it, put it together. But that's it for the Northernwind. I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys. I already showed you a little bit of how it works in play, but I'm going to really show you how it works when you have everything going right. Ah, that didn't work. Now look at that, that's a 26k damage shield. And that's just from barrier, or bone shield and the monster set. So this is why this build works so well, is because when you have your ice wall up and stuff, you can actually get it proc, the ice heart. And the more ice heart procs, the more you mitigate damage. So that's why you want to keep this ice wall, and you want to keep this up as much as possible. And so you can get that ice heart to proc. The back bar, or the main sword and shield bar, this is just to apply taunt mostly, and use to pull the pull for the enemies. So that's it. But that is the Northernwind, guys. I hope that you guys like it. I love this build. I can literally play this all the time, but not as much as I can the Dervish. The Dervish is just super cool the way it works. So, but yeah, that's it for the 2 Warden tanks. And I hope you guys like them. Like I said, if you guys do, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more build videos or videos by me, please hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.